Maria Hayward or Unitarians. Good morning to our family of Unitarians. Welcome to today's service in Tamaki Makaurau. Let's begin as usual with a few minutes of quiet reflection while we listen to Frank playing the Prelude, which is The Fading Stories by Yu Peng Chen. Tēnā koutou e ngā manuhiri e noho nei. Ko Maria Hayward ahau, ko au te kai whakahaere mō tēnei rā. Mau mai, haere mai ki tēnei whare tapu. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Greetings and welcome to the Auckland Unitarian family. Welcome to our guests present today. We're pleased you've decided to join us. Welcome to this special place made sacred for over 120 years. For those of you attending by Zoom, or those attending at a later time, Even if we can't see you, we feel privileged for joining to attend us remotely. Our hearts are warmed by your presence. For those of you attending in person, we offer morning tea and refreshments after the service. This is our gift of hospitality, our manaakitanga to everyone. In Te Ao Māori, manaakitanga is a fundamental concept and cultural value, generally translated as hospitality, but it also embodies the values of kindness and respect towards others. Please join us. For our online participants, I hope you too are able to remain in a group for a manaki and a discussion together afterwards, and maybe you'll have a cuppa at the same time. Ted, I wonder if you could come up and light the chalice for us. We light this flame to remind us love is at the centre. As we grow and connect, mature and deepen, love remains at the centre. When the light of truth burns all else away, love remains. Our theme for today is stories, and thank you, Frank, for connecting that first piece of music with stories. I've entitled the kōrero, Discovering the Essence of Humanity from Stories. We learn so much from stories, not only in a cerebral way, but also in an impressionistic way in terms of our feelings. When we participate in a service like today and listen to a homily-style talk, it may well be the feelings that we remember afterwards, more than the content. How might this be relevant to our Unitarian context? Well, because our humanity can be expanded from hearing and indeed from sharing or even just remembering stories. And in this whare and amongst this rōpū, we value compassion, inclusion, equity and empathy. I think we can amplify these qualities from remembering the feelings associated with stories. In a few weeks' time, we'll be doing more storytelling in a formal, structured way with our table talks. We'll also be hearing some personal stories from some speakers amongst our own members who will be telling stories about their own spiritual journeys. This is another reason I chose to write today's talk. Maybe it'll generate your own reflection about the important stories in your lives. It's time now for us to recite together the words of our covenant, the document that connects us as Unitarians. The last three words are optional, and of course your interpretation or your personal understanding of God or gods or no God is welcome here. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is the sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. Thus do we covenant with each other and with our God. We pause at this time to hold and honour the very personal joys and concerns of the congregation. You are invited to come forward and, holding microphone as close to your mouth as you feel comfortable, give your name, light a candle, and concisely share your joys and concerns with us. Or simply come forward and light a candle in silence, and we'll alternate the sharing time with people on Zoom. I would now like to invite Elaine to come up to the front and deliver a small reading for us.
Good morning, everyone. This is a passage by Boyan Zhivsky. We tell stories to others when connecting with them. We tell stories to our children to share moments of our lives with them. We tell stories to teach through our experiences and help our audiences infer meaning to their own lives. We tell stories to ourselves when something happens that derails our plans until we verify the evidence. We tell stories. Storytelling is hardwired in our human experience. From the age of time, we've been telling stories about how our ancestors lived, what they believed in, and so on. We can use storytelling to inspire people around us. This is the magic of storytelling. When you pass away, what stories will we share about the impact you've had in other people's lives?
Thank you, Elaine. Discovering the essence of humanity from stories. Just a brief caveat, these stories include mention of suicide and incest, but no detail. I want to share some stories today, stories that derive from my early teaching experiences, stories that shaped me into a different type of teacher than the nuns and others who taught me. I learned something even from just remembering the stories I'm going to share today. These are stories about how I, as a teacher, most poignantly and most intensely, was able to develop and strengthen my pedagogy. And this learning derived in significant part from the students themselves. I could tell so many refugee stories, but the following are from my secondary school teaching experience, and one is from my adult teaching role. When I was a teacher at what was a progressive secondary school in West Auckland, the principal told us first-year teachers, I think there were about 5 of us in the group, he told us, "You are teachers of maths, German, English and so on, but what you really teach is kids, rangatahi." He asked that we keep that in mind and added that the students who sat in front of us had lives outside school and anything might be going on for them in their homes, out of school hours. He said that if there were big things happening in children's lives, this would impact their learning. And we needed to be aware that this could indeed be occurring for some of our students. I recall he cited possible situations that included domestic violence, poverty, and he also mentioned that a young person might be struggling with their sexuality. They might be gay. I considered my classes, they were across all the levels, that is from year 9 to year 13, and I thought, oh, these things are unlikely amongst any of my classes. All my students seemed perfectly normal, happy, etc. I was sure that none of them would have terrible things going on in their homes, and I certainly couldn't see any gay kids in my cohorts. I imagined all the stereotypes, of course, and didn't see this. So I forgot about the advice, although I did quite like the aphorism, we teach kids, not subjects, or school subjects. But looking back, I'm so glad he gave us that little talk. It wasn't something you learned at Teachers' College. The focus there was solely how to teach your subjects. We also didn't learn anything about the learning process, about variations in learning styles, or about cultural differences. And no one ever mentioned anything about the lives or the humanity of our students. One day, a student at our school committed suicide. This shocked and traumatised me hugely. He seemed the perfect kid. I couldn't understand it. I think we all struggled with the trauma. The loss was terrible, and the reason was unfathomable to us. Later, people talked about depression. I wish I'd known about mental health issues at the time. I wish that any of us teachers had perhaps mentioned depression in our teaching, so that all students might have known it was okay to raise this topic and to seek help. I later wondered if maybe the boy was gay or perhaps even trans and couldn't express this or talk about it or possibly even name it. There certainly was something really big going on, and no one knew exactly what it was. Something was causing depression or deep, extreme anxiety. I became aware that it didn't matter how good you were at teaching your subject, your personal relationship with the students was what really mattered. Would they talk to you or not, or to anyone at the school? Would they reach out? Would it have been more important for me to have been this kid's excellent maths and German teacher, or to somehow have contributed to something that might have saved his life? And for me, it had to be the latter. I remembered what Des Mann, the school principal, had said, and I determined to change my teaching approach. I determined to become more observant of my students, more aware, more alert to signals, to have more of a relationship with them. A professional one, but one where they saw me as human and humane, and where I also saw them as human. Another time, I recall two of my students chatting intently in the hallway outside my classroom. The bell had gone, so all the other students were in class. I went to see why they weren't coming in. And I did remember what Des had said. The girls told me that one of them was too sad to come in. I told them to wait there while I quickly set work for the rest of the class. Then I ran, and I literally did run, up to the admin area to talk to the school counsellor and to ask what I should do. By the way, ours was one of the very few schools, maybe the only school in the country at the time that had a guidance counsellor instead of a disciplinary dean, or another word for that basically was a caning dean in the school. She told me to send the girl to her straight away, and luckily the student did go. At the end of the school day, the counsellor called me into her office. She told me that the girl revealed that incest was occurring in her family. The school had phoned the police, and the girl would not be returned home till the perpetrator had been removed. This was a very middle-class family, by the way. Another shock for me. A further situation I recall, where I was surprised to hear the backstory of a student, was when one evening I got a phone call from a parent saying that his son had come home after school that day with an earring in his ear. in one ear. They'd had a huge argument and he'd run out of the house. On the way out, he apparently, and weirdly, told his father to phone me. I didn't know why he did this, but on reflection, it may have been because I had taught this young person the same subject over 4 consecutive years, and during this time I'd got to know the class quite well. But I didn't know why the situation had occurred. Problems like this didn't happen in nice middle-class families, I was still thinking. And back then, boys didn't get their ears pierced. That was really rebellious. I recall his father saying to me, "How can he be a lawyer with a pierced ear?" I don't know how I thought of this, but I did manage to say something that was quite insightful, I think, at the time. And I'd remembered this from my youth line training. I said to the father, "Maybe he's done the piercing because he's trying to tell you something or he wants to talk to you. Maybe he just wants some sort of conversation." I imagined the conversation might be, "I don't want to be a lawyer, I want to be an artist." I didn't say this, but I did ask the father if he could let me know when his son came back home, as I was now rather concerned. Quite late that evening, the father did phone me. His son had come home, he said, and they'd had a very good talk together, and all was fine. I'm sure you're all guessing, or very likely knowing, what the problem actually was, but I was youngish, naive, and not very aware of diversity. I didn't think normal people back then were gay. The next day, his lovely friends told me that this was the case. They were mostly girls and had known that their friend was gay for quite a while. They said that his parents had now accepted this and also accepted that he didn't want to be a lawyer. Many years later, I met this young man in the city with his gorgeous partner. He told me he'd just completed a degree in something like marketing and design. These stories all made me grow up, mature as a teacher. I learnt not to stereotype, and that students might be depressed or confused or hurt or gay or anything. My role was to teach them and to care for them as well. Oh, by the way, my teaching wasn't all stories like this. Most of it was just hard slog. Although I do have to admit, I did really love teaching secondary-aged kids. Why am I relating these stories to you? Well, it's because stories evoke feelings, and we don't tend to forget the feelings that we experience during a talk, whether these be sadness, shock, fascination, pain, anger. Feelings are important, and when we feel things deeply, we are changed, we are transformed. So it was very good advice that I received from an amazing mentor in that school principal. I learnt to always be open to what might be going on, not only with students, but with others too. When I became a teacher of adult learners, I often found myself listening to aspects of students' life stories, and sometimes reading about them in assignments. So much goes on in the homes and hearts of people who are poor, people who come from different cultures or different language backgrounds or countries, people who are neurodivergent, perhaps former refugees or queer. And the stories gave me a deeper insight into the lives and internal goings-on of my learners. I could relate so many stories from my teaching career, but I've got just one more for you today. I recall a Pacifica student at tertiary level telling me that when she got home, after taking a train and then a bus to South Auckland, she would have to finish getting dinner ready for her younger siblings and help them with their homework. Her mother would be leaving for her second or possibly third cleaning job of the day, and I think she said that her father might still be asleep after a night shift. I also knew that the student worked at KFC on the weekends to pay for her bus fares and other uni costs. She mentioned another time that she had to do her assignments at uni where there were computers and Wi-Fi, which she didn't have at home. This young woman also shared with me that coming to university was like being in a different country. Even though she was born in New Zealand, it was the Palangi world. She had to navigate this culture as well as her own. Her whole life prior to this, she told me, was a brown world. Not a single Pākehā in her school, in her suburb, or in her church. And now she was in what felt like a foreign country. She had entered university, by the way, on an equity stream. She was in the bottom 10% of the grades in her first year. In her last year, she was in the top 10%. And I understand this is quite a common story with equity students. But imagine also the depth of understanding as well as the empathy, the compassion that she finished her training with compared to regular middle-class students, maybe our kids, with a very straightforward life and all the provisions for academic studies applied to them. Our UU principles and values guide us towards justice, equity and compassion. And if we're lucky, we become transformed. I really like being transformed. I see it as being improved, becoming a better human being. We learn from stories. We learn from listening to others, from hearing their stories. In a few weeks' time, we will also be listening to and sharing stories for our second table talk service. The topic will be health and care. I think that process will be transformative too. Kia ora koutou katoa. I do have a question for today's discussion which will go up on the screen later, and the question is this. What did today's talk make you think about? Is there a story you'd like to share? Briefly. I've chosen some closing words today from T.S. Eliot, and I'm not sure if he was a Unitarian, but I found this quote in the back of the hymn book, which I've just discovered has suggested readings and poems that can accompany our services. And I thought this was appropriate for the theme today. Might need glasses. What we call a beginning is often the end. And to make an end is to make a beginning. The end is where we start from. We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. Ted, I wonder if you could extinguish the chalice for us and the candles while we recite the words. Oh. There we go. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the power of transformation, or the fire of our hearts, until we are together again. Okay, Frank will now play the Postlude. You'll recall the first, the Prelude had a title, something to do with stories, and the Postlude is Free in Knowledge, and that's by Skinner and Goodrich. Thank you, Frank. And we now have 10 or 15 minutes discussion time. So if you could follow the usual procedure, form yourselves into groups of 5 or 6 people. And I think Rachel will put the question up soon.